Hello, my name is Bailey. Welcome to my channel. This is my July wrap-up. I'm not gonna lie to you, I've already tried to film this, literally hated everything about it. I tried filming this literally like 5 minutes ago, by the way, so I'm still in a shitty mood from that failing, so let's see if this goes a little bit better. I will tell you my stats right here. Let's not diddly down, let's just get into it. I read 9 books in July, and I had a total page count of 2,379 pages. My average rating was 3.38 stars, and here's my rating breakdown. We have 1 1-star, 2 2-stars, 2 3-stars, 1 4-star, and 3 5-stars. So overall, a pretty good month in regards to quality and quantity, which is great. And yeah, let's just try again. Let's just get into the specific books. The first book I read was A Whisper in the Dark by KJ Sutton and somebody else. This is the first part of a 4-part serial in the Charlie Travesty series. This book is about like 90 pages or so, and I read this in the end of June and like the beginning of July, so I don't remember a lot of my feelings on this book except for the fact that I gave it 3 stars. Basically, this book takes place in a city called Newville, which is actually like New York, but in the future after a bunch of shit happened to it. And it's kind of been overtaken by like vampires and supernatural creatures. I can't remember if there's a lot of other supernatural creatures, but I do know there's vampires. So let's just assume that there's other supernatural things, I just don't know. So basically this city, Newville, is led by this guy named the Vampire King, and our main character, Charlie Travesty, is the Vampire King's daughter, or one of his children. And basically in this world, it's broken down into like categories, and those categories are denoted by eye color. There's like green eyes and like gold eyes. They all denote different things. And then there's lavender eyes, which are basically, if you have lavender eyes, you're the garbage of the city, basically. Humans have lavender eyes, slaves have lavender eyes. Slaves are usually humans, but they can be other things too. And also half-breeds have lavender eyes. Half-breeds are basically people who have a vampire and a human parent. And Charlie Travesty at the beginning of this book is approaching the evening when she's gonna find out what color her eyes are gonna be and like what part of the city she's gonna live in and what she's gonna do with her life. And when she wakes up on the evening of her eyes changing, her eyes have changed a color that she did not expect them to change to. And that's the premise. I really did enjoy this. I'm always down for some vampire shit. So that was cool. I like the world. The characters didn't really have time to develop in this book, so like I like what I've seen of them so far, but I haven't seen enough to really care about any of them. I am really excited to see where like the world goes. Like I want to know more about this world because it's kind of cool. The only thing that I like didn't like, and I'm reading my Goodreads review to see what it was because like I don't really remember much about the writing, but I hated the flowery writing apparently, which I can't give you an example of it, but I do remember it being a little heavy on the metaphor, and that's just not something I enjoy. So that's kind of all I have to say on this book. So yeah, that's it. The next book I read was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is a adult contemporary romance. This book follows a girl named Chloe Brown, and she is a chronically ill graphic designer, and she has this near-death experience that kind of leads her to realize that she's not really living her life to the fullest potential because of her chronic illness. So she makes this Get a Life list that has a bunch of these items on it that she thinks will make her life more exciting. And then she ends up teaming up with, I think her apartment building's like superintendent, something like that, to achieve some of the things on the list. First off, this book has a trigger warning for abusive relationships or like recovery from abusive relationships. I did really appreciate that the author has an author's note that tells you the trigger warnings, which I think that every book should have. It was really like personal and very nice of the author to do that. The character that is recovering from an abusive relationship is Redford, who is the male main character, and I really appreciated that like the representation of that recovery from abusive relationship was a guy, because a lot of times in like media you don't see guys being victimized, you know? So it was really nice to see that. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars, by the way. This book was really, really great. It was adorable. The relationship was very cute. The smut was 10 out of 10, except for I almost gave this book 1 star, and there was a specific line that almost made that so.
So you gonna let me slide into that pretty pussy tonight, Chloe?
Almost made me DNF in 1 star this book, because that line is like absolutely atrocious, but I decided to let it slide. pun not intended. And I gave it 5 stars anyway, so we just try to ignore that line's existence. And other than that, I really enjoyed the smut and like the dialogue and like everything in general was really great. I really liked Chloe's personality. Like I think both the characters were really fleshed out, and I liked that Chloe was like quirky without the author shoving down our throats that she's quirky. I also really liked that when especially at the end, there's a scene where Red kind of snaps at Chloe, and the reason he does it is because of his past abusive relationship. Like he kind of like loses himself for a second because he's super like, he kind of gets triggered by something. But I like that despite the fact that there is a reason that happened, he doesn't excuse his actions and she doesn't excuse his actions because of it. I hate when people use their trauma as an excuse for being a shitty person now. So I liked that it was addressed that like, yes, this is why it happened, but I still have to take responsibility for my actions. So that was 10 out of 10, really great. I already have the sequel. I haven't read it yet, but I really want to get to it soon because I really liked everything about this book. And yeah, it's me. I did not mention this, but it's a little annoying to me. I hate when people review this or talk about this book and call it enemies to lovers. They literally mildly disliked each other for all of 2 seconds. This is not enemies to lovers. There was no like this to that. It was literally just like a romance from 2 people who barely know each other to being together. So yeah, just a random tidbit. The next book I read was I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Kimberly Jones and Gilly Siegel. This book follows 2 main characters. We have Lena and we have Campbell. Lena is this one, Campbell is this one. Basically, in this book, there's a football game that they're both at for different reasons, and at this game, this racially motivated fight breaks out, and things happen. They end up together, and there's a bunch of riots going on, and protests that became riots, and they're just trying to get out of the fire, you know, they're trying to get home. These 2 barely know each other, so it's kind of like this thing where these 2 people who aren't really involved with each other kind of get stuck together, you know what I mean? This book is really relevant, I believe, because of, like, the Black Lives Matter protest going on right now. Like, in this book, there's a Black Lives Matter protest, slash riot, and it's like, I haven't been to any of the protests, but from what I've seen, it was pretty realistic to what happens at them. So I think for that reason, this book is really good, but I did give it 2 out of 5 stars. The characters have no personalities. They like kind of flip-flop, but in general, they just stay very stagnant on their character development. Like, they don't develop at all. The actual, like, event, the shooting that happens at their school doesn't get fleshed out. The riots, like, I think that the action of the riot is very, like, it gets your heart racing because it's, like, really engaging, but the characters are so one-dimensional, they don't develop, they don't even become friends at all. Like, at the end of this book, something happens, and there's no actual, like, satisfaction. Like, nothing gets wrapped up at the end of this book. The characters kind of just go separate ways, and we never get any, like, resolution on anything. Aside from the main characters having stagnant personalities, there's a character named Black. That's not his actual name, but like, he's called Black the whole time. I don't actually remember his actual name. And he is Lena's boyfriend, and the whole time it's kind of trying to suggest us that he's kind of like a shitty boyfriend who's not really that, like, he doesn't really care that much about Lena. He's also 20 and she's like 17. So it's kind of suggesting to us that this is like a shitty relationship, that he's kind of using her. And then by the end of the book, we're supposed to like him because he's like not a shitty person. So his characterization is very like flip-floppy. It doesn't make sense to me what this book was trying to do with his character or any of their characters. This book wasn't it. I don't feel any type of way about it. Like, I don't like it, but I don't hate it. It just wasn't good in my opinion. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Great, next book, The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book is told in verse, and it follows a girl named Xiomara, and she's really into poetry, and she basically joins this poetry club at school, and she's expressing herself and her familial struggles through poetry, I suppose. A lot of this is like about her struggles with her mother and like religion. And I gave this 4 to 5 stars, but like in hindsight, I feel like it's more of a 3-star if I'm gonna be honest. Here's the thing, this book is really good. I really enjoy the poetry. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a few of them that I really marked off here. But this book does some things that I really hate. One, I don't believe sexuality is a spoiler, by the way. Her brother is gay, and there is no resolution on the fact that her mother believes, like, is ultra religious and, like, would basically kill this kid for being gay. We never have any resolution on that. I don't know what happens to the brother. They don't ever say if he comes out or not. We don't ever say if the mom's changed her beliefs. Like, it really, there's no satisfaction. No idea what happened there. Two, again with the mother, she legitimately abuses Xiomara in this book, and then she gets forgiven. And I don't see any growth. Like, the one page she's being, like, literally a horrible fucking person. The next page she's, like, smiling and shit. I'm like, I didn't see the growth. I am a firm advocate that just because someone is an adult and just because someone is your parent, you don't need to forgive them. So I didn't enjoy that at all in this book. So I feel like this is more of a 3-star for me, but I gave it 4 stars. Maybe it's a 3.5. We'll meet in the middle, say it's a 3.5. I'm gonna change my rating on Goodreads to a 3, but, like, I don't know. I liked this in a lot of aspects, but I just didn't like kind of the ending and the fact that I didn't really get any satisfaction out of it. I also didn't like that there's no satisfaction really on Xiomara's stance on religion, really, because she's very, like, questioning of the church in this book, and I enjoyed that because I'm not religious and I question a lot of the morals and values of, like, a lot of religions personally, and, like, I liked those poems and I liked when she was talking about that, but at the end she's kind of, like, down for religion, and I didn't understand that. So yeah, in general, good. I think it has a lot of merit. I really enjoyed it. Like, it's really well written. Also, I listened to the audiobook and the author narrates it, I'm pretty sure, and that was really great. So if you're gonna read this, I would recommend the audiobook. But yeah, I was a little unsatisfied by a few things at the end. Next we have Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. This is a graphic novel, and it follows this boy named Charlie and this other boy named Nick, and they become friends, and then they fall in love. This book is great. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. There's a lot of things I love about this book. One, Charlie is literally the most adorable being ever. Like, I don't think you could tell me there's someone more cute than him. Let me find him. There's one specific frame that I was feeling like on the whole thing, and then as soon as I saw this frame, I'm like, I'm in love. Like, that one frame made me fall in love with Charlie. He's literally fucking adorable. He's just, like, such a cinnamon roll. Like, he's a small bean and I love him, and he needs to be protected at all costs. And then Nick. Okay, Nick, I was kind of, like, super distracted by Charlie in the beginning because I'm just like, this kid is so adorable and I love him, that I didn't notice Nick for a while. But then, like, in, like, the middle end of the book, I started really liking Nick because of his struggle, and it was really relatable. And, like, because he is questioning his sexuality, because Charlie's gay, Nick is questioning, and there's a point in this book where Nick is searching up am I gay quizzes, and it brought me to tears because that's just such a relatable moment in the life, I suppose, of somebody who questions their sexuality. And it was just really nice to see that represented on the page because that's such, like, a realistic thing that happens. I know a lot of people, myself included, that, like, when you're questioning your sexuality, you turn to these stupid quizzes, and it's like, it's a really stressful thing, you know, to be questioning your identity. So I really liked seeing that, and it made me appreciate Nick's character a little bit more. I cannot wait to read the rest of this because it's just, the art style is adorable, and there are some tough things dealt with in here. There is talk of, I know that at some point eating disorders get brought up, but it's not in this book. And then in this book, though, there is, like, I wouldn't say an abusive relationship, but more of, like, a toxic situation. There was, like, a light sexual assault sort of scene in this book as well. I would like to say, on, like, LGBT+ rep, there's a character in this book, and he's bisexual, and he's, like, cheating on his girlfriend with Charlie, and I don't know, that one, like, I kind of let it slide, but that one kind of, like, I don't think it's perpetuating the bisexuals or cheaters thing, but I think it could be perpetuating the bisexuals or cheaters thing. So, like, I don't know, I guess, like, form your own opinion on that one. That's the only sketch thing in this book for me. I don't know. I feel like that one's up to interpretation. That's the only sketchy thing that was in this book that I'm kind of, like, on the fence about. But other than that, love this a lot and cannot wait to continue. The next thing I read was The Madness Underneath by Maureen Johnson. This is the sequel to The Name of the Star, and the second book in the Shades of London series. The first book, The Name of the Star, basically follows this girl named Rory, and she moves from America to London to go to a boarding school. And then she has a near-death experience. And due to this near-death experience, Rory can now see ghosts. It's like a paranormal mystery thing. To explain the whole ghost thing, basically, some people are born genetically predisposed to be able to see ghosts, but they need to have a near-death experience between the ages of 1 and 18 to unlock that ability. So she has a near-death experience, she can see ghosts now. In the first book, there is this Jack the Ripper copycat killer going around, and Rory has to team up with these people called the Shades, which are also people who can see ghosts, to take down this killer. I gave the first book 3 stars, and this is gonna be a weird thing to say, but like, I love this series. I've given both books 3 stars. I gave this 3 stars as well. More like a 3.5, but like, I round down on Goodreads. But like, I love the series. Like, I can realize that the writing isn't the best, the characters aren't the best, that it's pretty tropey, but I love the series nonetheless. Like, I love the ghost shit. I loved the murder plot line in the first book. Like, the Jack the Ripper copycat shit was perfect for my true crime self. They're 3-star books, but I love the series anyway. Okay, so this book deals a lot with, like, I wouldn't say PTSD, because that's never strictly said. I don't know. I don't want to, like, diagnose people with things, but it does deal a lot with, like, dealing with trauma, because at the end of the last book, Rory goes through some, like, fucked up shit. And she goes through, like, a physical event and, like, mental shit. So the majority of, like, the first 100 or so pages is dealing with her mental state and, like, kind of therapy and shit. And a lot of, like, character relations. She has a boyfriend at the beginning of this that's, like, super relevant. Their relationship is never fleshed out, and I don't know why they're together, but that's kind of dealt with throughout this book. So this book is a lot lighter on, like, murder ghost stuff, but it's still in there. And then there's, like, some cult shit that's introduced, and I thought I was gonna dislike this book. I thought it was gonna be, like, a 2-star because of the beginning, because I was like, I'm not really into We Are Recovery, I just want to read about ghosts. But then I, like, realized by the end that, like, that was kind of a needed, like, break from the action, because it would be weird if she just bounced back from the thing that happened at the end of the last book and was fine. So I appreciate what this book did now. By the end, I was enthralled again. It reminded me why I liked these books, because they're, like, not the best, but they're still super exciting for me, and I really enjoy them. Also, like, a new character relationship was introduced in this book, and I'm on board, I think. I'm on board, but also major character death. I won't tell you who, even though, like, not a lot of people read this series, but, like, I won't tell you who, but it was, like, my favorite character. Maureen just went, no, goodbye. Literally never dealt with my favorite character in a book series being killed before, and I didn't enjoy it. Did not enjoy it at all. But yeah, like I said, the end of this book, like, I didn't see it coming, but, like, cult shit gets introduced, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm on board, I'm interested, except for this series seems like Maureen Johnson's forgotten project. Because it's been 5 years since the 4th book was announced on Goodreads, and silence. Where is it? Maureen, where is it? So I'm scared to read the 3rd book because I don't want to be left on a cliffhanger that's never gonna be resolved. But, like, I've also heard rumors that this book does exist and that it will come out at some point, so we'll see. We shall see. I read these relatively quickly, and I just have a good time every time I read these books, so I am excited to read the 3rd book, but also terribly scared because of the ending of this book and the fact that there is no confirmed 4th book. So, I don't know. The next thing I read was All Out, edited by Sandra Mitchell. This is a compilation, an anthology of no longer secret stories of queer teens throughout the ages. I'll just say the tagline that's easier. This book I gave 2 out of 5 stars. Wasn't a fan. Like I just said, it's just a bunch of, is that the right word? An amalgamation? I don't know if that's the right word. But it's an amalgamation of historical queer stories. And when this book says that it is a bunch of LGBTQ plus stories, what it actually means is it is LGT stories, with one A story. Basically, there's no bisexual stories, no pansexual stories in this book, and there was one asexual / aromantic story. The rest of them are just lesbian, gay, and trans. And like, not that they don't deserve stories, but like, where's the rest of the letters? See, my big problem with this book was the romances, which is the whole point of this book, but like, I was never convinced in any of these stories except for like 2 of them. No, I would say 1 of them, because I rated all of these stories like 3 stars or 2 stars, except for 1 I rated 1 star. And then there's 1 I rated 4.5 stars, which is The Girl with the Blue Lantern by Tess Sharp, which I loved. But like, other than that story, I was not convinced by any of the character relations. I didn't get why they liked each other. I didn't get why they were fucking each other. It just was happening. A lot of times they would be spending like a few hours together and I'd be like, oh, you're like becoming friends, right? And then suddenly they're making out, or suddenly their like clothes are off. And I'm like, no, like, I was not convinced by anything in this book. Like, they would take sharp 180 turns into Romance Town for no reason. I'm just like, no. I wasn't convinced why they liked each other. I just didn't get it. It wasn't doing it for me. There was also 1 story. The 1 story I gave 1 star, that was vaguely pedophilic. There's a 16-year-old boy who is making out with and ready to run off to New York to be like his basically butler, to this like university-aged guy, and I get that it might be like legal technically, but I was not a fan of the fact that it was just unaddressed, that that's like vaguely pedophilic, like, and it doesn't ever say the dude's age, like the university kid, but like, depending on his age, that could be like illegal. I did not like that. It wasn't addressed, it just was there. So yeah, this just wasn't all I thought it was going to be. I was like, oh yay, a bunch of queer stories, I'm super excited, and then it was just like not all that. The lack of character development and lack of like convincing relationships just is not it for me, and I think because they're short stories, that's kind of why that happened too. So I don't know if I'm going to be like seeking out more short story collections in the future, but I already own this one and I'm glad I finished it, so that's cool. The 8th book I read in July was The Disturbed Girls Dictionary by Nonika Ramos. I gave this one to 5 stars and literally hate it. This book follows a girl named Macy, and she has a really troubled life. There's a lot of fucked up shit going on in her life. And the synopsis of this book will lead you to believe that Macy spends this book trying to mend her relationship with her best friend. In actuality, this book has no plot. This book is told in the, like, format of a dictionary. So basically, this is Macy's dictionary that she's writing. She'll write like a phrase or a word, she'll define it, and then she'll write like a journal entry basically that like goes along with the words. So it's kind of like vignettes, I suppose. And there's so many flaws with the concept. Like, it just doesn't work, because logically, how are these words coming up, and like, how are these words coming up and then the journal entries are still chronological? Like, that doesn't make sense. So unique is sometimes not the best. But other than that, characters, hated them all. There is literally like abysmal representation of everything in this book. There's abysmal mental health rep. There's abysmal disability rep. It's just so bad. Slurs are used in this book. The author is black, the main character is black, so I'm not talking about the N-word. Even though the N-word is used, that's not what I'm talking about. The F slur, as in like, not fuck, and the R word is used, and wasn't a fan of that at all. Within the first 40 pages, Macy's made up with Alma. They don't have any problems anymore. They have problems later on, but like, that's already over. It's just like these random stories in Macy's life. It doesn't give you anything to read on about, because you're just like reading these random stories from her life, and then at the end we take like a left turn into child prostitution land and like sex trafficking, and like, I would say there's a lot of torture porn in aspects of this book. There's like animal cruelty, there's just violence, everything's gratuitous. Macy, our main character, has a troubled past, and she will go out of her way to tell you every 3 seconds that she's disturbed. Don't really understand what that really means even now, but like, she would keep saying that, and she would use her trauma as an excuse for being like a dick to everybody. She is like, she shames sex workers often. She calls them like whores and shit. And she is just rude to her friend Alma. Her best friend Alma, she's like trying to convince me that she loves her. and she's like the most important person to her, but then she also goes out of her way to like breach her privacy, and she doesn't really respect Alma at all. I can't be sympathetic to her because she's just so rude and mean at every turn to people who didn't ask for it, didn't do anything to her. Like, it's like you can't pass off your shitty actions on your trauma. Point blank, period. So yeah, 1 star. The last book I read in July was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. This book is a adult contemporary, I think. It follows a girl named Amira, and she's black, and she's a babysitter for this woman named Alex, and she's white. Well, her name's Alix, but I'm gonna call her Alex because it's easier for me to say. And Alex is white, and it's important. The race is important. This book is a lot about race. Basically, she babysits this woman's kid. So yeah, what I was saying, Amira babysits Alex's kid. I'm gonna sneeze, I just can't right now. And one night, Alex and her husband have like this kind of emergency, and they are calling the cops, so they don't want their kid to be in the house. So they call up Amira and they ask her to go like entertain her for a bit at a grocery store. So Amira goes and takes the kid there, and she gets racially profiled and like accosted by the security guard. And that's kind of like the initial incident of this whole book. And this book is about performative activism and just all in all white people using black people to look more woke. And this book is phenomenal. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's just really perfect, honestly. The caucasity of the white characters in this book is just like at the ceiling. This book is like, if you read this book and if you've read this book, it is so frustrating to read at so many points because you read from the 2 perspectives. We have Amira's perspective and we have Alix's perspective. And reading Alix's perspective is mind-numbing because she's just so oblivious to the fact that she's being racist and just like rude and manipulative and weird. And it's just, it's hard to read because it's so fucking annoying, but it's also so good because you understand like the message of the book is so realistic and important. To talk about the ending, without saying like too much about it, the characters don't really change. Like, the people who are racist in this book don't really change by the end of this book, and I think that was really realistic because a lot of times when people get called out for their actions, they don't change them anyway. For example, Alex, she never really believes she did anything wrong. Throughout this book, she feels like she's justified in everything she does. And then there's another character named Kelly. He's a male main character, and he's also white, and he fetishizes black people, and at the end of this book, he's still doing that. And it kind of shows that like people don't change all the time when you realize that they're doing something wrong. Sometimes they won't even like acknowledge that they're doing something wrong, and that you just kind of have to cut them out of your life in a way because they're not going to change. So I like the realisticness of the ending of this book, but it just the bullshit that occurs from the white people in this book is just the 2 white people in this book, Kelly and Alex, they act like children in this book, and they are just horrible people. I hated both of them so much. Like, aside from being racist, they are so oblivious to the fact that they are clearly obsessed with each other. Like, you dated him like 15 years ago, girl. Like, move on. Don't stalk his LinkedIn. Who does that? It was just ridiculous. And Alex believing she needed to take care of Amira and like she owned Amira. She said oftentimes in this book that Amira was hers. It's like, you don't own this woman. Why do you feel this way? And like, she had this white savior problem. There were so many white savior moments in this book. Like, Kelly believes he can white-splain and mansplain racism to this black woman. And Alex like feels like she needs to get Amira away from Kelly. It was so, again, it was so frustrating, but it's so realistic to this white savior syndrome that some people have, where they believe they need to protect people of color from racism, but they don't realize that they're inherently being racist when they're doing that. So yeah, I enjoyed this book a lot. Aside from like the messages of the book, it was written really well, so I think everyone should read it, and it was really good. Oh my god, okay, I'm done. Cut the cameras. This has been my July wrap-up. I'm glad it's over. Yeah, I'll see you next time. I've been Bailey. Bye.